My brother stole my business while I was fighting cancer. I took everything back. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Plain manila, no return address. Just my name typed across the front in professional letters. I almost threw it away with the rest of the medical bills and insurance paperwork that had become my life for the past 6 months. Almost. Inside was a single sheet of paper, with a handwritten note clipped to the top. Mr. Hayes, I thought you should see this. Patricia Miller, our company accountant for 12 years. The numbers on the page beneath her note made my hands shake so badly I had to set my coffee down. Contract amendments. Client accounts transferred. My name systematically removed and replaced with one other name, David Hayes. My brother, $2.3 million. That's what Hayes Brothers Construction was worth when I went in for my first chemotherapy session 6 months ago. The business my wife Sarah and I had built from nothing. The company I'd handed 40% of to my younger brother because family comes first, because blood is thicker than water, because I was stupid enough to trust him. I stared at the documents spread across my kitchen table, the same table where David and I used to sketch building plans on napkins, dreaming about the future. My chest tightened, not from the cancer this time, but from something worse. Betrayal that cut deeper than any surgeon's knife. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The house felt too quiet. It had been quiet for 2 years now, ever since Sarah's funeral. But this was a different kind of silence. The kind that comes when you realize the person you trusted most in the world has been slowly, methodically, stealing your life while you fought just to stay alive. I picked up the top document with trembling fingers. Transfer of client account, Riverside Mall Development Project, $780,000. Dated 3 months ago, right when I was in the middle of radiation treatments, barely able to stand without help. My hands curled into fists, crumpling the paper. The sound was sharp in the empty kitchen, like bones breaking. Sarah's voice echoed in my memory, soft but insistent. We'd been sitting in this very kitchen 2 years ago, her skin pale from the chemotherapy that would eventually fail to save her. Mark, I need to tell you something about David. What about him? I'd been making her soup, the smell of chicken broth filling the air. He's jealous of you, of us, of what we've built. She'd gripped my hand with what little strength she had left. Promise me you'll be careful with him. Don't give him too much control. I'd kissed her forehead, breathing in the lavender scent of her shampoo. David's my brother, Sarah. He'd never hurt me. She'd looked at me with those knowing brown eyes, already seeing something I refused to acknowledge. People change when money's involved, Mark. Even brothers. I should have listened. God, I should have listened. Standing in my kitchen now, surrounded by evidence of David's betrayal, I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, where my heart used to be. The same kitchen where Sarah had warned me. The same table where she'd held my hand and made me promise to take care of myself after she was gone. I'd broken that promise, but I wasn't going to break it anymore. My phone buzzed. David's name appeared on the screen. Hey bro, how you feeling? Wanna grab dinner tonight? My treat. My treat. With my money. From my company. While planning to steal everything I had left. I set the phone face down without responding and reached for Patricia's note again. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting, she'd added a phone number and a single line. I have more documents. Call me when you're ready. I looked at Sarah's photo on the counter, the one from our 20th anniversary. We'd been standing in front of our first completed building, her head on my shoulder, both of us covered in concrete dust and grinning like idiots. We'd built an empire with our bare hands, sacrifice and love. David thought I was too weak to fight back. Too sick, too tired, too grateful for his help managing the business while I recovered. He thought cancer had made me helpless. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. I dialed Patricia's number with steady hands. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Hayes. Patricia. My voice came out rough like gravel. Tell me everything. The cancer had started 18 months ago. Stage 3 colon cancer, the doctors said. Same thing that took Sarah. Like some cosmic joke, the universe decided one Hayes wasn't enough. I remember sitting in Dr. Morrison's office, the sterile smell of antiseptic making my stomach turn, looking at x-rays that showed the mass growing inside me. The doctor's voice had faded to background noise as I stared at that dark shadow on the screen. All I could think was, Sarah. I'm going to see Sarah again. But then Dr. Morrison said something that pulled me back. Your prognosis is actually quite good, Mr. Hayes. If we start aggressive treatment immediately, you have an 85% survival rate. 85%. Better odds than Sarah had. I'd called David from the parking lot, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel of my truck. The same truck I'd bought used 15 years ago, when Hayes Brothers Construction was just me, a crew of 3, and more ambition than sense. Mark, what's wrong? You sound weird. I have cancer. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Colon cancer. Stage 3. Silence. Then, Jesus, Mark, I'm so sorry. What do you need? What can I do? What could he do? David was my younger brother by 8 years, the kid I'd raised after our parents died in a car accident when he was 16, the struggling musician I'd given a job to when his band fell apart and he was 3 months behind on rent, the best man at my wedding, who'd cried harder than I did when Sarah walked down the aisle. I need you to help me run the company, I'd said, just for a few months, while I do treatment. I can't do both. Of course. Mark, you know I've got your back. Whatever you need. Whatever you need. I'd trusted those words, believed them with every fiber of my being. David came to the house that night with pizza and beer, sat with me at the kitchen table, and listened as I outlined the treatment plan. 6 months of chemotherapy and radiation. Surgery if the tumors didn't shrink enough. A long, brutal road ahead. I'll need you to take over the day-to-day operations, I'd told him, pulling out the company files I'd prepared. Client meetings, site inspections, payroll. Patricia handles most of the financial stuff, but she'll need authorization from one of us for major decisions. David had leaned forward, his eyes serious. You can count on me, big brother. Hayes Brothers Construction isn't just your legacy. It's ours. I'll protect it like it's my own. Like it's my own. Those words echoed in my head now. 6 months later, as I sat across from Patricia Miller in the back booth of a quiet diner on Colfax Avenue. The lunch crowd had thinned, leaving us in relative privacy. Patricia had brought a leather portfolio, the kind lawyers use, stuffed with documents. She was 53, gray hair pulled back in a sensible bun, wearing the same style of practical business clothes she'd worn for over a decade. But her hands trembled slightly as she opened the portfolio. Mr. Hayes, I want you to know this wasn't an easy decision. David I thought he was a good man. Tell me everything, Patricia. Don't spare my feelings. She nodded and pulled out the first document. It started about 4 months ago. Small things at first. David asking me to route invoices to his personal email instead of copying you. Said you needed to focus on recovery, didn't want to stress you with business details. I remembered those conversations. David stopping by the house after my chemo sessions, finding me pale and weak, holding my hand. Don't worry about anything at work, Mark. I've got it all handled. You just focus on getting better. Patricia slid another document across the table. Then came the contract modifications. David started adding clauses to new client agreements that designated him as primary managing partner, with full authority to make decisions without your consultation. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. How many contracts? 14 major ones. Total value of $1.8 million. She flipped through pages, each one a knife in my back. Riverside Mall, the Thompson Industrial Complex, 3 residential developments in Cherry Creek. All of them now list David Hayes as the primary contact and decision-maker. I stared at the names. Projects I'd won through years of building relationships, proving ourselves on smaller jobs, earning trust one completed building at a time. The Riverside Mall alone had taken me 3 years to land. I'd met with their development team 9 times, adjusted our bid twice, personally guaranteed quality timelines. There's more. Patricia's voice dropped lower. 2 months ago, David came to me with paperwork to restructure the company ownership. Said you'd discussed it during one of your hospital stays, that you wanted to reduce your stress by giving him majority control. My hands clenched around the coffee cup. I never discussed anything like that. I know. That's why I stalled him. She pulled out a legal document marked with yellow sticky notes. This is a proposed amendment to your partnership agreement. It would reduce your ownership from 60% to 49%, giving David 51%. Majority control. The diner suddenly felt too hot, too small. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, the same way it sounded during chemo when the drugs pumped through my veins, poison fighting poison. There's a clause here, Patricia pointed to the fine print, stating that in the event of your incapacitation or death, David automatically assumes full ownership. No buyout requirement for your estate. My estate. Sarah's name should have been on that estate. Our future children. The ones we'd planned for before cancer stole her away at 47. Now it would all go to David. Everything we'd built, every sacrifice, every 16-hour day, every missed dinner and postponed vacation, because we were building something that would last. He's not just stealing the company, I said slowly, the realization settling over me like ice water. He's planning to cut me out completely. Patricia nodded, her eyes sad. Last week he asked me to prepare financial projections for a scenario where Mr. Mark Hayes is no longer involved in daily operations due to health concerns. He wanted to know exactly how much the company would be worth with him as sole owner. How much? $2.3 million, based on current contracts and projected revenue. But Mark, she hesitated. He also asked me to calculate a fair buyout price for your shares if you became too ill to work. And $450,000, less than 20% of your actual equity value. The number hit me like a physical blow. $450,000 for a business I'd built from nothing, for 15 years of 70-hour weeks, for the money Sarah and I had scraped together by mortgaging our house, maxing out credit cards, eating ramen for months while we established ourselves. I thought about the first contract we'd ever won, a small residential addition in Aurora, $28,000. Sarah had done the books by hand, sitting at this very kitchen table until midnight, making sure every penny was accounted for. We'd made $200 profit after materials and labor. We'd celebrated with champagne from 7-Eleven and Chinese takeout. He thinks I'm too weak to fight back, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Too sick, too grateful for his help. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her palm was warm, maternal. She'd worked for us since the beginning, had watched us grow from a 2-person operation to a company with 43 employees. She'd helped Sarah balance the books during those early years, had attended her funeral, had sent me care packages during chemo. Mark, there's one more thing. She pulled out a printed email. This is from 3 days ago. David to a corporate attorney named Richard Stenson. I read the email, and with each word, the ice in my chest spread further. Richard, need to move forward with the incapacity paperwork we discussed. My brother's health is deteriorating rapidly. Doctors give him 6 months at most. Untrue. He's mentally confused from the medications. Untrue. Making poor decisions. Untrue. I need legal authority to protect the business he built. Can you prepare documents declaring him incompetent to manage business affairs? I want this done before he realizes what's happening. Once I have control, we can proceed with the sale to Titan Construction, as discussed. Their $2.5 million offer is too good to pass up. Confidential, obviously. David, the paper, crumpled in my fist. $2.5 million. He's selling the company, without your knowledge or consent, Patricia confirmed. Titan Construction is one of our biggest competitors. They've been trying to buy us out for 3 years. I remembered those conversations. The CEO of Titan, Robert Marsh, calling me personally. Name your price, Mark. We want Hayes Brothers' reputation and client list. I'd turned him down every time. This was Sarah's legacy, our legacy, not something to be sold to the highest bidder. But David had no such sentiments. David saw dollar signs and an opportunity. I stood up, my legs steadier than they'd been in months. The chemo fog that had clouded my thinking for half a year was lifting, replaced by crystal clarity. Patricia, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Gather every document you can find, every contract David's modified, every email, every financial record. I need proof of everything he's done. She nodded. I've already started. I have copies of everything in a secure drive. Good. I pulled out my wallet and handed her $500 bills. The money I'd been saving for next month's medical bills. This is for your trouble. And your silence. David can't know that I know. Patricia pushed the money back. Keep it for your legal fees. You're going to need a good attorney. She pulled out a business card. This is my cousin, Stephanie Chen, corporate law specialist. She's helped several business owners deal with partnership disputes. I looked at the card. Stephanie Chen, Man, Chen and Associates, Business Law and Litigation. Thank you, Patricia. Mark. She caught my arm as I turned to leave. David's been paying himself $15,000 a month as management consulting fees. That's $90,000 he's taken in the 6 months since you've been sick.
It's not in your partnership agreement. It's theft. $90,000. On top of his regular 40% profit distributions, on top of the $120,000 annual salary I'd already been paying him for 3 years. I thought about the nights I'd worked late to make payroll, the vacations Sarah and I had canceled because cash flow was tight, the way we'd celebrated when we finally broke 7 figures in annual revenue, splitting a bottle of cheap champagne because we'd put every extra penny back into the business. And David had been stealing $15,000 a month while I fought for my life.
Get me everything, I said quietly. Every document, every transaction, every email. I want to know exactly how much he's stolen, and I want proof that will hold up in court. Patricia smiled grimly. You'll have it by tomorrow. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Denver's streets, the same streets where Sarah and I used to drive together, pointing out buildings we'd worked on, proud of every project we'd completed. The house felt different when I walked in.
Not like home anymore. More like a crime scene where I was still gathering evidence. I went straight to my office, the small room off the kitchen, where I kept all my business files.
The room where Sarah used to sit with her laptop, managing accounts while I reviewed blueprints. Her reading glasses were still on the desk, folded next to a stack of industry magazines I couldn't bring myself to move.
I pulled out the filing cabinet and found our original partnership agreement, signed 15 years ago when David was 28 and desperate for direction after his band broke up. I remembered that day clearly.
We'd been sitting in this very office, David's hands shaking as he signed his name, tears in his eyes. I can't believe you're giving me this chance, Mark, after I screwed up so badly. He'd been $45,000 in debt. Credit cards maxed out, 3 months behind on rent, his car repossessed. The band had fallen apart after their guitarist got arrested, and David had spent 2 years chasing a dream that would never materialize. I'd bailed him out, paid off his credit cards, $45,000 from the emergency fund Sarah and I had saved, got him into a decent apartment, $2,400 for first and last month's rent plus deposit, bought him a used truck so he could get to job sites, $8,500. Your family, I'd told him that day. Family takes care of each other. I'd given him 40% of the company, not because he'd earned it, but because I believed in him, because I remembered being 28 and lost, right after our parents died, because Sarah said everyone deserves a second chance. David had cried and promised he'd make me proud, promised he'd work harder than anyone, promised he'd never forget what I'd done for him. I found the receipt folder in the bottom drawer. Every major expense I'd covered for David over the years because I kept meticulous records. Sarah had taught me that.
$45,000. Credit card debt payoff, March 2009, $2,400. Apartment deposit, March 2009, $8,500. Used Ford F-150, April 2009, $12,000. David's portion of startup costs I'd covered, 2009-2010, $67,000. Loan for David's house down payment, 2015, never. Repaid, $23,000. David's divorce settlement I'd helped with, 2018, $18,000. David's daughter's private school tuition for 2 years, 2019-2021. The total came to $175,900. Nearly $126,000 I'd given my brother over 15 years. Money Sarah and I could have used for vacations, for her medical bills, for retirement. But family comes first. That's what I'd always believed.
I pulled out my phone and stared at David's last text. "Hey bro, how you feeling? Wanna grab dinner tonight? My treat. My treat. With my money." My fingers moved across the keyboard. "Can't tonight. Still feeling rough from last week's treatment. Rain check?" The response came within seconds. "Of course. You rest up. Love you, bro. We'll celebrate when you're feeling better." Celebrate what? My death, his takeover. I set the phone down and walked to the kitchen, to Sarah's photo on the counter. She was smiling in that picture, her hair still thick and dark before the chemo took it. We'd been standing in front of the Riverside Mall project, our biggest contract to date. "You were right," I whispered to her image. "You were right about him." Her voice echoed in my memory, from one of our last conversations before she died. "Mark, promise me something. Anything, baby. Don't let people take advantage of your kindness. You have the biggest heart of anyone I know, but that makes you vulnerable, especially to people you love." David would never. "Just promise me. Promise you'll protect yourself." I'd promised, and then I'd broken that promise by trusting David completely. But I wasn't going to break it anymore. I pulled out Stephanie Chen's business card and dialed her number. It rang 3 times before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Chen and Associates. This is Stephanie. Ms. Chen, my name is Mark Hayes. Patricia Miller gave me your card. I need to discuss a partnership dispute." "Of course, Mr. Hayes. Patricia called me this afternoon. She gave me a brief overview of your situation." Her voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry you're going through this, especially while dealing with your health. Can you help me? That depends on what you want to accomplish. Do you want to buy him out, dissolve the partnership, pursue criminal charges for theft?" I looked around my kitchen, at the life Sarah and I had built, at the business we'd sacrificed everything for, at the brother I'd loved and trusted and saved. "I want to take everything back," I said, my voice hard as steel. "Every dollar, every contract, every piece of the company he's trying to steal. And I want to make sure he can never do this to anyone else." There was a pause. Then Stephanie said, "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? I'll be there. Bring every document you have. Partnership agreements, financial records, emails, texts, anything that shows what he's been doing. I'll have everything." After I hung up, I sat in Sarah's chair and let myself feel it all. The betrayal, the rage, the bone-deep hurt of being stabbed in the back by the person you loved most in the world after your wife. David thought I was weak, thought cancer had broken me, thought I'd be too sick, too tired, too grateful for his help to fight back. He was about to learn that Mark Hayes didn't build a $2.3 million company by being weak, and he was about to learn that betraying a dying man's trust was the biggest mistake of his life. I pulled out my laptop and started making a list. Everything I needed to do, every step I needed to take to reclaim what was mine. Sarah's photo seemed to watch me from the counter, her eyes full of the strength she'd always had, the strength she'd tried to give me before she left. "I'm going to make this right, baby," I whispered. "I promise." Outside, the Denver sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, like fire, like war. David had started this fight while I was on my back, too weak to defend myself. But I was standing now, and I was going to finish it. The offices of Chen and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a sleek glass building on 17th Street, the kind of place that screamed success and competence. I arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a leather messenger bag stuffed with 15 years of documents. The same bag Sarah had given me for our 10th anniversary, back when we were still celebrating milestones instead of counting down to goodbyes. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, offered me coffee while I waited. I accepted, more for something to hold than any desire to drink it. My hands needed occupation. They wanted to curl into fists. "Mr. Hayes?" Stephanie Chen appeared at exactly 9 a.m., punctual to the second. She was 42, according to Patricia, but looked younger, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and a navy suit that spoke of courtroom victories. Her handshake was firm, confident. "Please, come in." Her office was all clean lines and law books, with diplomas from Harvard Law and Stanford on the wall. But what caught my attention was the large whiteboard behind her desk, already covered with notes in neat handwriting. Hayes Brothers Construction, timeline of events. Patricia sent me preliminary information last night, Stephanie explained, gesturing for me to sit. I've been reviewing your situation since 6:01 a.m. Let me be direct, Mr. Hayes. What your brother is doing constitutes fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and possibly criminal embezzlement. I set my messenger bag on her desk. I have proof of everything. For the next 2 hours, we went through every document. Stephanie made notes on her laptop with the speed and precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But unlike what I'd expected, she wasn't cold or clinical. Every time we uncovered another layer of David's betrayal, I saw genuine anger flash across her face. This contract modification, she pointed to the Riverside Mall documents, was done without your knowledge or consent. I didn't even know we'd won that contract until Patricia told me yesterday. I was in the hospital for surgery when David finalized it. Stephanie typed rapidly. Date of your surgery? February 18th. They removed a section of my colon. I was in the ICU for 3 days. And this contract is dated February 20th. She looked up at me, her eyes hard. He literally signed this while you were unconscious in a hospital bed. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. I remembered waking up from that surgery, the pain like nothing I'd ever experienced. David had been there when I opened my eyes, holding my hand, tears streaming down his face. I thought I was going to lose you, Mark. Just like we lost Sarah. I can't do this without you. I'd squeezed his hand back, too weak to speak. Grateful he was there. Grateful I wasn't alone. And while I lay there drugged and helpless, he'd been signing contracts that cut me out of my own company. Chibur, Stephanie pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. According to Patricia's records, David has paid himself $90,000 in unauthorized consulting fees over 6 months. He's also been routing company funds to a personal account. Small amounts but consistent. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Total of $67,000 in what appears to be embezzlement. $157,000. That's what he'd stolen while I fought cancer. There's more. Stephanie clicked through emails Patricia had forwarded. This correspondence with Titan Construction shows David has been negotiating a sale for the past 3 months.
The current offer is $2.5 million, of which he's negotiated to keep 65% as the acting managing partner. That's $1,025,000. My 60% ownership would entitle me to $1.5 million of a $2.5 million sale.
David was trying to steal an extra $125,000 on top of everything else. But here's what's particularly egregious. Stephanie turned her laptop toward me. This email from David to Robert Marsh at Titan Construction, dated 2 weeks ago. I read the words, each one a knife. Robert, my brother's condition is terminal. Doctors give him 3 months maximum, LIE. He's agreed to let me handle the sale, LI. Let's structure this as me selling my majority stake. Lie, he doesn't have majority, with the understanding that Mark's shares will transfer to me upon his death per our partnership agreement. Lie, no such clause exists. We can close this in 30 days if you're still interested. At 2. Hoffman, looking forward to finally joining the Titan team. David, he's telling them I'm dying in 3 months. My voice came out flat, emotionless. The rage was too big for emotion. It had gone past anger into something cold and calculating. He's also lying about your partnership agreement. Stephanie pulled out the original document I'd brought. There's no automatic transfer clause here. Upon your death, your shares would go to your designated beneficiary. Who is that, by the way? I thought about the will Sarah and I had made together, sitting in a different lawyer's office 5 years ago.
There's a clause that says if Sarah predeceases me, my business shares go to establish a scholarship fund in her name at the University of Colorado.
For students studying architecture. Sarah's dream had been to be an architect before her father's death forced her to drop out and get a job. We'd always planned to fund scholarships once we had the money. Stephanie made a note. So David gets nothing if you die. which means he's trying to force a sale or transfer before that happens. This is desperation, Mr. Hayes. He knows his window is closing. What are my options? Stephanie leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. Option 1. We sue him for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and embezzlement. It would be a strong case, but litigation takes time. 12 to 18 months minimum, and it would destroy any remaining relationship with your brother. I almost laughed. There is no remaining relationship. Fair enough. Option 2. You force a dissolution of the partnership based on his fraudulent conduct. You'd have to buy him out based on the company's current valuation, which would cost you around $920,000 for his 40%. $920,000 I didn't have in liquid assets. The company was worth, to my $2.3 million, but most of that was tied up in equipment, contracts, and receivables. Option 3, Stephanie continued, her eyes gleaming with something that looked like anticipation, is the nuclear option. You sell the company yourself before he can. As the 60% majority owner, you have the legal right to initiate a sale without his consent, as long as you give him his proportional share of the proceeds. I stared at her. I can sell without his permission. Absolutely. Partnership law is very clear on this. Majority owner has the right to sell business assets, including the business itself. David would receive 40% of the sale price, minus any debts or obligations he owes the company. She pulled out a calculator. Let's say we sell for $2.3 million. His 40% is $920,000. But he's stolen $157,000 in unauthorized fees and embezzled funds. He owes the company that money, so his actual payout would be $763,000. And I would get $1.38 million, minus my legal fees and closing costs. Call it $1.3 million net. Stephanie looked at me carefully. But Mark, this would mean ending Hayes Brothers' construction. Everything you and Sarah built. I thought about that. Thought about the sleepless nights and the sacrificed vacations and the dreams we'd poured into every project. But then I thought about Sarah's voice in that hospital room 2 years ago. It's not the company that mattered, Mark. It was us. What we built together. That's in here. She'd touched my chest, over my heart. No one can take that away. David had already taken the company. He'd corrupted it and stolen from it, turned it into something Sarah and I wouldn't recognize. What remained wasn't our dream anymore. It was a crime scene. How fast could we sell? I asked. Stephanie smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who knew she had the winning hand. If we move aggressively, 2 weeks, maybe 3. There are several companies who would jump at acquiring Hayes Brothers' reputation and client list, including, ironically, Titan Construction. Would they still want it if David isn't part of the deal? Oh, they want your client relationships and your reputation for quality work. David's just been positioning himself as indispensable, but he's not. You're the one who built those relationships over 15 years. She pulled out her phone. I have contacts at 3 major construction firms who've expressed interest in acquisitions. Let me make some calls. Wait. I held up my hand. If I do this, David can't know until it's done. He can't have any warning. Agreed. We'd need to move very carefully. The process would be, 1, I discreetly contact potential buyers and gauge interest. 2, we get a formal valuation of the company. I know a firm that can do it in 48 hours. 3, once we have an offer, we present David with a fait accompli. The company is sold. Here's your check. Goodbye. How would he react legally? He could try to sue, to block the sale, but he'd lose. You have clear majority control, and he's been committing fraud. Any judge would side with you, especially once we present evidence of his theft and lies. Stephanie's expression hardened. And there's one more thing we need to discuss. Criminal charges. Against David, embezzlement of $67,000 is a felony in Colorado. So is fraud. We're not talking about a civil disagreement between partners. We're talking about crimes. She pulled out a legal pad. I need to ask you directly, Mr. Hayes. Do you want your brother to go to jail? The question hung in the air like smoke. Did I want David in jail? The kid I'd raised after our parents died. The best man at my wedding. My little brother.
But then I thought about him signing contracts while I was unconscious from surgery, about him telling potential buyers I had 3 months to live,
About him stealing money while I maxed out credit cards to pay for chemotherapy drugs my insurance wouldn't cover. I want him to face consequences, I said carefully. Real consequences, not just losing money. He needs to understand what he did was wrong. Stephanie nodded. Then here's what I recommend. We pursue the company sale first.
Once that's complete and he receives his payout, we present him with a choice. He can either accept the situation and walk away, or we file criminal charges with the evidence we have. It's not blackmail because we have legitimate grounds for charges.
It's offering him a chance to avoid prosecution if he accepts the business outcome without litigation. It was elegant, brutal, but elegant. David would get $763,000, more money than he'd ever had in his life, but he'd lose the company, lose the $2.5 million payday he'd been planning, and live with the knowledge that I could destroy him completely if he fought back. Do it, I said. Start the process. Stephanie extended her hand. I'll need a $25,000 retainer to begin. That'll cover the initial valuation, legal filings, and negotiation work. If this goes to litigation, we'll discuss additional fees. I thought about the $85,000 I'd spent on chemo drugs and hospital bills, the $12,000 loan I'd taken out last month to cover living expenses because I'd been too sick to work, the retirement account Sarah and I had built to $340,000 that I'd been slowly draining to survive. $25,000 was a lot of money for a man living on borrowed time and borrowed funds, but reclaiming my life, that was priceless. I'll write you a check. I left Stephanie's office at 11:30 a.m., feeling lighter than I had in months. Not happier. There was no happiness in destroying your brother's dreams, even when he'd tried to destroy yours first. But there was clarity, purpose. The fog of betrayal was lifting, replaced by the sharp focus of a man with a plan. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. David's name on the screen. Hey bro, just finished the Thompson site inspection. Everything looking good. Want me to swing by with lunch? I got your favorite, pastrami from Jake's Deli. Jake's Deli, where Sarah and I used to go every Friday for 15 years, where we'd celebrated landing our first major contract, where we'd shared sandwiches and dreams and built a life together. David knew it was my favorite. He knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. I typed back, thanks but not feeling great today. Still recovering from Tuesday's treatment. Rain check. Of course, you rest up. Love you, bro. Love you. The words made my stomach churn. I drove to the bank and withdrew $25,000 from my remaining savings account. The teller, a middle-aged woman named Rosa, who'd handled our business accounts for years, smiled sympathetically as she counted out the cashier's check. How are you feeling, Mr. Hayes? We've been praying for you at our church. Getting stronger every day, Rosa. Thank you. And your brother. I see him in here quite often now making deposits for the business. My hand froze on the check. How often? Oh, several times a week. Such a devoted brother, taking care of everything while you recover. She smiled warmly. You're lucky to have family like that. Lucky, right. Rosa, can you do me a favor? Don't mention to David that I was here today. I'm trying to surprise him with something. Her eyes lit up. Of course. How wonderful. Your secret's safe with me. I drove to Patricia's house, a modest ranch in Lakewood where she'd lived for 30 years. She answered the door still in her business clothes, having clearly left work early for this meeting. Come in, Mark. I have everything ready. Her dining room table was covered in documents, organized into neat stacks with color-coded labels. This is everything I could find, Patricia explained, gesturing to the paper empire of my brother's betrayal. Financial records, emails, contract modifications, unauthorized payments. I've also created digital copies of everything on this drive. She handed me a USB stick. Password protected. The password is Sarah 2007, the year we'd hired Patricia. I picked up the nearest stack. Invoices for consulting services. David had paid himself $15,000 on March 3rd, $15,000 on April 7th, $15,000 on May 12th, all authorized with his signature, which technically he could do as a partner, but never disclosed to me. This stack, Patricia pointed to another pile, is particularly damning. These are expense reports David submitted for business travel. I flipped through them. $200 for a client development trip to Las Vegas, $6,800 for a construction conference in Miami, $12,400 for an industry networking event in San Diego, all during the 6 months I'd been sick. I checked, Patricia said quietly. There were no legitimate business purposes for any of these trips. The Vegas one coincided with his girlfriend's birthday. I found the photos on his Facebook before he made his account private. Girlfriend. David had gotten divorced 3 years ago. I'd paid $23,000 toward his settlement. He'd told me he was focusing on work, not dating. Apparently, he was focusing on spending my money entertaining women. There's more. Patricia pulled out a thin folder. Last week, David asked me to prepare a document declaring the company's financial status. He needed it for the Titan sale, though he didn't tell me that. But look at the numbers he told me to use. I read the financial statement. Assets, $1.8 million. Liabilities, $600,000. Net worth, $1.2 million. What's wrong with this? Our actual assets are $2.4 million. Our actual liabilities are $280,000. The real net worth is $2.12 million. Patricia's voice was sharp with anger. He's deliberately undervaluing the company by almost $1 million. Why would he? And then I understood. If the company was officially worth $1.2 million and David sold it to Titan for $2.5 million, it would look like he'd negotiated a miracle deal. He'd be the hero who saved the struggling business. And when it came time to distribute proceeds, he could argue he deserved a bigger cut because of his exceptional negotiation. He's been planning this for months, I said slowly. Every piece, every lie, every manipulation. This wasn't opportunistic. This was calculated. Patricia nodded. I think it started even before you got sick. About 8 months ago, I noticed small discrepancies in the books. Nothing major, just $500 here, $1,000 there. I thought it was accounting errors. Now I think it was testing, seeing if anyone would notice. 8 months ago, 3 months before my diagnosis, while Sarah's grave was still fresh and I was barely functioning through my grief. My phone rang. David again. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. Hey Mark, me again. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something important. Can you call me back when you get a chance? Nothing urgent, just, there's an opportunity I want to discuss with you. Love you, bro. An opportunity? Probably the Titan sale, packaged as something that would benefit both of us. The final manipulation before he stole everything. I looked at Patricia. When Stephanie sells the company, you'll be out of a job. She smiled sadly. I know, but I'm 61, Mark. I was planning to retire in a few years anyway. And honestly, after what David's done, I don't want to work for whoever buys this company. I've watched you build this business from nothing. What he's doing to you, it's wrong. I couldn't stay silent. I'll make sure you're taken care of. A severance package, whatever you need. You focus on taking care of yourself first. She squeezed my hand, motherly, caring. Sarah would be proud of you. For fighting back, I gathered all the documents, loaded them into boxes Patricia had prepared, and drove home as the afternoon sun painted Denver gold. My phone buzzed constantly. David calling every 30 minutes, his messages getting progressively more concerned. Mark, you're worrying me. Just call so I know you're okay. Starting to think I should drive over there. Are you sure you don't need anything? Okay, I'm coming over. Be there in 20 minutes. I pulled into my driveway and saw David's truck already parked on the street. He was sitting on my front porch steps, his head in his hands, looking genuinely distraught. He stood up when he saw me, relief flooding his face. Jesus, Mark. I've been calling you for hours. I was about to call the hospital. Phone died. I lied easily, patting my pocket. Sorry, didn't mean to worry you. He pulled me into a hug, and I had to force myself not to stiffen. You scared me, man. With your health, I keep thinking about Mom and Dad. That phone call telling us there'd been an accident. I can't lose you too. Mom and Dad. He knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. Our parents had died when I was 30 and David was 22. Drunk driver, gone in an instant. I'd become David's guardian, his parent, his brother. I'd raised him through college, through his failed music career, through his divorce. And this was how he repaid me. I'm fine, I said, pulling away. Just tired. These treatments take it out of me. I know. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. David followed me inside, settling onto my couch like he owned the place. I've been thinking about your future, about what happens if, he trailed off delicately, if I die. God, don't say it like that. He looked genuinely pained. But yeah, we need to be realistic. And I've been approached with an opportunity that could secure both our futures. Here it comes. Titan Construction wants to buy us out, David continued. Not a merger, a full purchase. They're offering $2.5 million. I kept my face neutral. That's a lot of money. It is. And here's the thing. I've negotiated that you'd keep your full 60%, $1.5 million mark. You could pay off all your medical bills. Set yourself up for whatever comes next. No more stress about money. It was a good lie. Almost believable. If I hadn't seen the emails, I might have even considered it. What about you? I'd get my 40%, but honestly, I don't care about that. I care about making sure you're taken care of. He leaned forward, his eyes intense, selling it hard. Mark, you've taken care of me my whole life. Let me do this for you. The manipulation was masterful. He was framing, stealing my company as an act of brotherly love. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. But Mark, they need an answer soon. This kind of offer doesn't stay on the table forever. He stood up. Just promise me you'll seriously consider it. For your health, for your peace of mind. After he left, I stood in my empty kitchen and felt something like admiration, twisted as it was. David wasn't just stealing from me. He was making me thank him for the privilege. I pulled out Sarah's photo and studied her face. I'm doing this for us, I whispered. For everything we built. He doesn't get to take that and pretend he's the hero. My phone buzzed. A text from Stephanie Chen. Interest from 2 buyers already. Can you meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. to discuss? I typed back, I'll be there. Outside, spring was turning to summer. The garden Sarah had planted was blooming, roses and lavender filling the air with scent that reminded me of her perfume. Life going on, indifferent to betrayal and cancer and broken families. But I wasn't indifferent anymore. I was ready for war. Let me continue with the meeting with potential buyers and the process of secretly selling the company. The next morning, I woke up to a text from David sent at 6:47 a.m. Morning, bro. Thinking about you. Coffee later? We should talk more about that opportunity. That opportunity. He was already pushing, sensing time was running out. I ignored the text and instead drove to my oncologist's office for my scheduled follow-up. Doctor. Morrison's face broke into a genuine smile when she reviewed my latest scans. Mark, this is remarkable. The tumors have shrunk by 73%. Your CEA levels are almost normal. She turned the monitor so I could see the before and after images. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You're beating this. Beating it. 6 months ago, I'd been preparing to die. Now I was preparing to live and to fight. How much longer for treatment? 2 more rounds of chemo, then we'll do another scan. If the numbers hold, we might be talking about remission. She squeezed my shoulder. You're one of the lucky ones, Mark. Lucky. I'd lost my wife, discovered my brother's betrayal, and spent 6 months poisoning myself to stay alive. But I was still here, still standing, and that was more than Sarah got. I thought about her constantly as I drove to Stephanie's office that afternoon. Sarah had been the strong one in our marriage, the one who made the hard decisions while I tried to make everyone happy. She would have seen through David years ago. She would have protected us. Now I had to protect what was left. Stephanie's office was different this time. 2 men in expensive suits were already seated around her conference table, laptops open, leather portfolios at the ready. Mark, thank you for coming. Stephanie gestured to the men. This is Robert Marsh from Titan Construction and James Chen from Rocky Mountain Development Group. Both companies have expressed serious interest in acquiring Hayes Brothers, Robert Marsh, the same CEO David had been secretly negotiating with. He was 55, silver-haired, with the confidence of a man who'd built an empire. His handshake was firm, assessing. Mr. Hayes, I'll be direct. I've been trying to acquire your company for 3 years. Your reputation for quality work and your client relationships are exactly what Titan needs to expand our residential division. I thought you were already in negotiations, I said carefully. With my partner. Robert's expression flickered with something. Surprise, then understanding. Ah, your brother did approach us several months ago, but let's say he was operating under some misrepresentations about his authority to negotiate. Such as claiming he had majority control of the company, such as suggesting you were incapacitated and he had power of attorney. Robert leaned back. I'm a businessman, Mr. Hayes, but I'm not in the business of taking advantage of sick men.
When my legal team did due diligence, we discovered David Hayes only owns 40%. You're the majority owner. That's when I stopped negotiations with him. So David's plan had already started falling apart.
Titan had done their homework and discovered the lies. When was this? About 3 weeks ago. I told David we'd need your direct involvement and approval. He became agitated. Said you weren't competent to make business decisions due to medication. Robert's eyes hardened. That's when I knew something wasn't right. So I'm glad Stephanie reached out. I'd much rather do business with the man who actually built Hayes Brothers Construction. 3 weeks ago, right when David sent that email declaring I had 3 months to live, he'd been scrambling, trying to close the deal before Titan insisted on my involvement. James Chen from Rocky Mountain cleared his throat. Mr. Hayes, I'll put our cards on the table. We're prepared to offer $2.4 million cash for full acquisition.
That includes all equipment, contracts, intellectual property, and client lists. We'd retain your current employees and honor existing contracts. The deal could close in 14 business days, $2.4 million.
Nearly what David had been secretly negotiating for, but this time legitimate. Titan can match that offer, Robert said immediately. And we can close in 10 business days if needed. Stephanie held up a hand. Gentlemen, let's not turn this into an auction just yet. Mark, we received the independent valuation this morning. She slid a bound report across the table.
Hayes Brothers Construction is valued at $2.3 million based on current assets, contracts, and projected revenue. Either offer would be considered fair market value. I flipped through the valuation report. Every asset itemized.
Every contract analyzed. The business Sarah and I had built, reduced to spreadsheets and projections. There's one complication, I said. My partner owns 40%. He'd need to be paid his share. Of course, James said. Standard practice. 40% of $2.4 million is $960,000. Though I understand from Stephanie there may be some deductions from his portion. Stephanie pulled out the documents Patricia had compiled. Mr.
David Hayes has taken $157,000 in unauthorized payments and embezzled funds over the past 6 months. Additionally, there are several loans from the company to Mr. David Hayes that were never formalized or repaid, totaling $67,000.
These would be deducted from his share. Robert and James exchanged glances. Robert spoke first. So his actual payout would be approximately $736,000. Correct, Stephanie confirmed. And given his fraudulent conduct, we have legal grounds to proceed with the sale without his consent. Mr. Mark Hayes holds majority control and has the fiduciary right to act in the company's best interests. Which means David doesn't even know this meeting is happening, I added. A slow smile spread across Robert's face. It wasn't cruel, but it was satisfied. Mr. Hayes, your brother tried to sell me a company he didn't own while lying about your condition. I have no problem with this arrangement whatsoever. James nodded. Rocky Mountain's offer stands. $2.4 million, 10-day close, and we'll handle all the logistics of informing Mr. David Hayes, lying about your condition. I have no problem with this arrangement whatsoever. James nodded. Rocky Mountain's offer stands. $2.4 million, 10-day close, and we'll handle all the logistics of informing Mr. David Hayes after the sale is complete. Titan will match the offer and timeline, Robert said. With one addition, we'll offer employment contracts to your key people at their current salaries. I know your site supervisors are among the best in Denver. We'd like to retain that expertise. It was a better deal. Titan was bigger, more established. My employees would have job security. The company name might disappear, but the people who'd worked for me wouldn't be left unemployed. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Robert pulled out his business card. But, Mark, may I call you Mark? I want you to know something. I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen a lot of family businesses destroyed by greed and betrayal. What your brother tried to do to you, that's unconscionable. Whatever you decide, I hope you take him to the cleaners. After the meeting, Stephanie walked me to my truck. The afternoon sun was hot on my shoulders, reminding me I was still alive, still fighting. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking about Sarah, about what she'd want me to do. And what would that be? I looked up at the Denver skyline, at the buildings where Hayes Brothers construction projects stood as monuments to our work. She'd want me to protect myself, to stop letting people take advantage of my kindness. I turned to Stephanie. Let's go with Titan. Robert seems like a decent man, and my employees will be taken care of. Stephanie smiled. I'll draw up the paperwork. We can have this done by next Friday. David can't know. Not until it's finished. He won't. As far as anyone knows, you're just a sick man recovering at home. The next week passed in a strange double life. During the day, I played the role of grateful invalid, responding to David's texts with weakness and gratitude. At night, I signed documents that would end everything he'd planned. Tuesday, David brought me soup from my favorite restaurant. You need to keep your strength up, bro. I thanked him while my lawyer finalized the purchase agreement with Titan. Wednesday, David showed me photos from the Thompson Project site. We're making great progress. You built something really special here. I nodded and smiled while Stephanie filed the legal notices required for the sale. Thursday, David suggested we go out for dinner when I felt better. Maybe this weekend, we should celebrate. I've got good news about that opportunity, I mentioned. I agreed while signing transfer documents for every company asset. Friday morning, I woke up to an email from Stephanie with the subject line, "It's done." The sale was complete. Titan Construction now owned Hayes Brothers Construction. $2.4 million had been wired to the company account. The breakdown was already calculated. My 60% share, $140,000. David's 40% share, $960,000, minus unauthorized payments, $157,000, minus unpaid loans, $67,000. David's actual payout, $736,000. My actual payout after legal fees and closing costs, $1,387,000. I stared at the number. $1,387 million. More money than Sarah and I had ever dreamed of having. Enough to pay off every medical bill, buy a modest home, and live comfortably for the rest of my life, however long that might be. But it wasn't about the money. It was about justice. Stephanie's email continued. Wire transfers complete. David's check has been prepared and is being held at my office. Titan's legal team will handle all employee notifications on Monday. Suggest you inform David this weekend in a public place for safety reasons. Let me know when you're ready. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready for this conversation, but it was time. I called David. He answered on the first ring, his voice bright with false cheer. Mark, how are you feeling today? Better, actually. I think I'm up for that dinner you mentioned. Really? That's great. Genuine happiness in his voice. He thought he was winning. Where do you want to go? The Broker, 7 p.m. My treat this time. The Broker was the steakhouse, where we'd celebrated landing our first major contract 15 years ago, where Sarah had ordered champagne, and I'd felt like we could conquer the world. It seemed fitting. That's where I'd end David's world. You sure you're up for it? That's a pretty nice place. I'm sure. I've been thinking about what you said, about that opportunity. I want to discuss it properly. I could hear the relief in his voice. That's wonderful, Mark. Really wonderful. I'll see you tonight. I spent the day preparing. I showered, shaved, put on the navy suit Sarah had bought me for Caitlin's graduation. In my pocket, I carried a manila envelope containing copies of every document Patricia had compiled. Every theft, every lie, every betrayal, printed and organized. I also carried a letter I'd written the night before. My last words to the brother I'd loved and lost. At 6:45 p.m., I arrived at the broker early and requested a quiet corner booth. The same booth where Sarah and I had sat 15 years ago, young and hopeful and naive about what family meant. David arrived at exactly 7 p.m., wearing slacks and a button-down shirt, his hair neatly combed. He looked good, healthy, prosperous, built on money he'd stolen from me. "Mark!" He pulled me into a hug that felt like knives. "You look great. Really. Better than I've seen you in months." "I feel better. The doctors are optimistic." We ordered drinks. Bourbon for him, water for me. The chemo made alcohol taste like poison, which seemed appropriate for this dinner. "So," David leaned forward eagerly, "have you thought more about the Titan offer?" "I have. Tell me again what they're offering." He launched into his pitch. $2.5 million purchase price, my 60%, protected, his negotiation skills ensuring the best possible deal. All lies, delivered with practiced sincerity. I let him talk, let him sell me on stealing from myself. When he finished, I pulled out the manila envelope and set it on the table between us. "What's this?" David asked. "Open it." His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the first document. I watched his face as he read. Watched confusion, turned to comprehension, turned to horror. "Where did you get these?" "Patricia. She's been documenting everything you've done for the past 6 months. David's face went white. "Mark, I can explain." "Explain what?" "The $157,000 you stole. The lies you told Titan about me being incompetent. The email where you said I had 3 months to live." My voice was calm, surgical. "Which part would you like to explain first?" "I was protecting the business. You were sick. You couldn't—" "I couldn't what?" "Make my own decisions, run the company I built." I leaned forward. "You were stealing from me while I fought for my life, David. While I was in the hospital having surgery, you were signing contracts to cut me out. While I was vomiting from chemo, you were embezzling money to take your girlfriend to Vegas. How did you—" He caught himself, but too late. "How did I know? Because unlike you, I still have people loyal to me, people who care about more than money." I pulled out the final document. "This is a bill of sale. Hayes Brothers Construction was sold to Titan Construction yesterday for $2.4 million. David's bourbon glass slipped from his hand, amber liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "You can't. You didn't." "I did. I'm the majority owner. I had every legal right." I pushed the envelope toward him. "Your 40% comes to $736,000 after deductions for the money you stole. The check is waiting at my lawyer's office. You can pick it up Monday morning." "Mark, please." His voice cracked. "Don't do this. The company is all I have. You should have thought of that before you tried to steal it from me." "I wasn't stealing." "I was trying to help you, to make sure—" "Stop lying." The words came out, harsh, final. "I have every email, every document, every piece of evidence. You weren't helping me. You were counting down the days until I died so you could take everything." David's face crumpled. For a moment, I saw the 22-year-old kid who'd cried at our parents' funeral, the brother I'd raised and protected and loved. Then he said, "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The debt, the expenses. I needed that money." And just like that, the last thread of sympathy snapped. "You needed my money," I corrected. "Money I earned. From a business Sarah and I built while you were playing rock star and maxing out credit cards." I stood up, my legs steady despite the emotion choking me. "I paid off $45,000 of your debt, gave you $67,000 for a house, covered your divorce settlement, handed you 40% of a company worth millions, and you repaid me by stealing everything while I fought cancer. Where does this leave me?" His voice was small now, defeated. "With $736,000. That's $736,000 more than you deserve. I pulled out the letter I'd written and set it on the table. This is from me and Sarah. Read it when you get home. Sarah's been dead for 2 years. But she knew. She warned me about you before she died. Said you were jealous, that you'd hurt me if you got the chance. I felt tears burning behind my eyes but refused to let them fall. She was right. About everything. I turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing needed to be said. By the way, my lawyer has all the evidence of your embezzlement. That's a felony, David. We could press charges, but we're not going to, as long as you accept the sale results and never contact me again. Fight this, and I'll make sure you go to prison. Are we clear? David nodded, unable to speak. I walked out of the broker, into the cool May evening, leaving my brother surrounded by spilled bourbon and shattered dreams. The same booth where Sarah and I had celebrated our first victory now marked our last. My phone buzzed. A text from Stephanie. "How did it go?" I typed back. "It's done." The letter I'd left for David said everything I couldn't say to his face. "David, by the time you read this, you'll know what I've done. Part of you will think I'm cruel, heartless, that I betrayed you. But here's what you need to understand. I didn't betray you. You betrayed me. You betrayed Sarah's memory. You betrayed 15 years of brotherhood and sacrifice. When Mom and Dad died, I became your parent. I was 30 years old, just married, trying to build a business. But I took care of you, put you through college, paid your debts, gave you a job when you had nothing. I did it because I loved you. Because family is supposed to take care of each other. But you never saw it that way, did you? You saw it as weakness, as something you could exploit. You thought my generosity made me stupid. My trust made me vulnerable. Sarah knew. In her last days, she begged me to protect myself from you. I didn't listen. I couldn't believe my little brother would hurt me. Then I got cancer, and while I lay in a hospital bed fighting to survive, you stole from me. You lied to clients, embezzled money, planned to declare me incompetent so you could sell everything we built. You didn't just betray me, David. You betrayed Mom and Dad's memory. They raised us to be better than this. The $736,000 you're receiving is more than fair. It's more than you deserve after stealing $157,000. Take it. Start over. Build something of your own, instead of trying to steal from people who love you. But understand this. You and I are done. No more calls, no more texts, no more checking in or fake concern. You wanted my company? You got $736,000 instead. You wanted me out of the way. Now I'm out of your life forever. I hope it was worth it. Sarah told me once that the hardest part of love is knowing when to let go. I'm letting go of you now. Not with anger. I'm too tired for that. But with finality. You're my brother. You'll always be my brother. But you're not my family. And goodbye, David. Mark P.S. The scholarship fund Sarah and I planned will receive $200,000 from my share of the sale. It will help architecture students at the University of Colorado. Kids with dreams and integrity. Everything you used to be. Every year, 10 students will benefit from money you tried to steal. That feels like justice. Monday morning, Patricia called me at 8:30 a.m. "Mark, David just arrived at Stephanie's office to pick up his check. He looks terrible. Did he cause trouble?" "No. He just asked if there was any way to reverse the sale. Stephanie told him it was final. He signed the receipt and left." Patricia paused. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I feel free." And I did. The weight I'd been carrying for 6 months. The confusion, the betrayal, the sense that everything was slipping away, had lifted. I'd fought back. I'd won. Tuesday, I received a call from Robert Marsh at Titan. "Mark, wanted to give you an update. We've met with all your former employees. Every single one accepted our employment offers. Your site supervisors spoke very highly of you. Said you were the fairest boss they'd ever had. That means a lot. Thank you. There's something else. We're not changing the name completely. The residential division will be called Hayes Quality Construction, a Titan company. Your reputation deserves to continue." I had to close my eyes against the sudden burning. Sarah would have loved that. Our name living on, not as a monument to betrayal, but as a promise of quality work. "Robert, I don't know what to say. Say you'll consult for us occasionally. We could use your expertise on custom projects. Paid consulting, of course. No obligation, just when you're feeling up to it. A future. Robert was offering me a future, beyond cancer, beyond betrayal. I'd like that. Wednesday, I received a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I am. I got lost somewhere along the way. The money, the pressure, the jealousy. I let it turn me into someone I don't recognize. You deserved better. Sarah deserved better. I hope someday you can forgive me. D. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to accept the apology, to rebuild something from the ashes. But Sarah's voice echoed in my memory. People don't change when money's involved, Mark. They reveal who they always were. I deleted the message and blocked the number. 3 months later, I sat in Dr. Morrison's office, listening to the best words I'd ever heard. Remission. I should keep the emotional tone consistent. Dignified triumph, not gloating. Mark should find peace and a new beginning. The ending should show that betrayers face consequences while the protagonist finds liberation. Let me continue with the proper pacing and emotional beats for a satisfying conclusion. Remission, Mark. The scans are completely clear. No detectable cancer cells. Dr. Morrison's smile was radiant, genuine. You beat it. I sat in that sterile office chair, the same chair where I'd received my death sentence 18 months ago, and felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in so long. Hope. How long until I'm considered cured? We'll monitor you closely for 5 years. But honestly, your response to treatment was extraordinary. You're one of the success stories we tell other patients about. A success story. The man whose wife died from the same disease, whose brother tried to steal everything while he fought to survive, who lost his company and his family in the span of 6 months. But I was alive, and I was free. I walked out of that medical building into the August sunshine, feeling like a different person. Not the Mark Hayes who'd built a construction empire, not the grieving widower or the betrayed brother. Someone new, someone who'd been burned down to nothing and rebuilt himself from the ashes. My phone rang as I reached my truck. Patricia's number. Mark, I wanted to give you a heads up. David tried to contact me. My chest tightened. What did he want? He wanted to know if there was any way to reverse the sale. Said he'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to make things right. Patricia's voice was carefully neutral. He also asked if you'd be willing to talk to him. What did you tell him? That I no longer work for Hayes Brothers Construction and couldn't help him. Mark, he sounded desperate. Said something about investment losses and needing money. Investment losses. David had received $736,000 just 3 months ago. What had he done with it? That's not my problem anymore, Patricia. I know. I just thought you should be aware. She paused. How did your appointment go? Remission. Her sharp intake of breath carried through the phone, followed by something that sounded like tears. Oh, Mark. Sarah would be so proud of you. After we hung up, I drove to Fairmount Cemetery to the plot where Sarah rested under a simple granite headstone. I'd chosen granite because it was what she'd loved most in our kitchen. Permanent, beautiful, impossible to break. I sat on the grass beside her grave, the way I'd done countless times over the past 2 years. I'm in remission, baby. The doctors say I beat it. My voice cracked. I wish you could have beaten it too. The August wind rustled through the cemetery trees, carrying the scent of cut grass and roses from nearby graves. Peaceful. Sarah would have liked that. I did what you told me to do. I protected myself. From David, from everyone who thought they could take advantage. I traced the letters of her name carved in stone. He got $736,000, and apparently lost it already. Patricia says he's desperate for money. I thought about that, about David burning through $750,000 in 3 months. The gambling, bad investments, the girlfriend with expensive tastes. It didn't matter. He wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'm starting the scholarship fund next week, the Sarah Hayes Memorial Scholarship for Architecture students. $200,000 endowment. It'll help 10 students every year. I smiled through tears. They'll learn about you, about your dreams, about how you were going to design buildings that made people feel at home. A car pulled into the cemetery, and I recognized the silver Lexus immediately. My stomach dropped. David. He parked 50 feet away and climbed out slowly. He'd lost weight. His clothes, expensive 3 months ago, now hung loose on his frame. His face was hollow, aged beyond his 43 years. We stared at each other across the cemetery lawn, Sarah's grave between us, like a barrier. "I didn't know you'd be here," David said finally. I come here sometimes to talk to Sarah. You need to leave. Mark, please. I just need 5 minutes. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I blocked your number. That should have told you something." He took a step closer, and I stood up, my hands clenching into fists. "Don't. I lost everything." His voice broke. "The money. All of it. I made some bad investments, trusted the wrong people. I have nothing left. You had $736,000 3 months ago. I know. I was stupid, desperate. I thought I could turn it into something bigger, make back what I'd lost." He ran his hands through his hair, the gesture so familiar it hurt. "I'm going to lose my house, Mark. My car. Everything." "Good." The word came out cold, final. David flinched like I'd struck him. "I'm your brother." "No." I stepped around Sarah's grave, creating more distance. "A brother doesn't steal from you while you're dying. A brother doesn't lie to your clients and embezzle money. A brother doesn't try to declare you incompetent so he can sell everything you built. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I've apologized. Your apology means nothing. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost." I pointed at Sarah's grave. "She warned me about you. She saw what you were before I did, and I should have listened." David's face crumpled. "I loved Sarah too. She was like a sister to me. Don't you dare." My voice rose, anger finally breaking through the careful control I'd maintained. "Don't you dare talk about Sarah. She knew exactly what you were. She tried to protect me from you, and I was too stupid and too trusting to listen. What do you want me to say? That I'm a terrible person? Fine, I'm a terrible person. That I destroyed everything? I did. I destroyed my relationship with my brother. I destroyed my career. I destroyed my future." His voice was rising too, desperate. "But I'm still here, Mark. I'm still alive. And I'm asking you, begging you, for help. The answer is no. I'm going to be homeless. Do you understand that? Homeless." I thought about the irony. David had planned to put me in a nursing home and steal my house. Now he was about to lose his own. "You received $736,000, I said, quietly. "That's more money than most people see in a lifetime. What you did with it is your responsibility, not mine. Please." He was crying now, openly. "I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. I'll work for you. Just help me." "I can't help you, David. Even if I wanted to, and I don't, you'd just do the same thing again. You'd take whatever I gave you and convince yourself you deserved more. I've changed." "No, you haven't. You've just run out of options." I pulled my truck keys from my pocket. "I'm in remission. The cancer is gone. I'm going to live, David. I'm going to build a new life, start a scholarship in Sarah's name, maybe even find some peace. And you're not going to be part of any of it. Mark, goodbye, David." I walked to my truck and drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing alone among the gravestones, a man who'd lost everything because he'd wanted too much. 6 months later, I stood in the auditorium at the University of Colorado's Architecture School, watching 10 students receive the first Sarah Hayes Memorial Scholarships. Each one had been selected based on financial need, academic excellence, and a personal essay about what home meant to them. The first recipient, a 20-year-old named Maria Rodriguez, stepped to the microphone with tears in her eyes. "I grew up in a trailer park in Pueblo. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I never thought I'd go to college, let alone architecture school." She looked down at the scholarship certificate in her hands. $20,000. That's not just money. That's my dream, becoming possible. She looked directly at me in the front row. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you for believing in students like me. And thank you to Mrs. Hayes's memory."
I read about how she wanted to design buildings that made people feel at home. That's what I want to do too. I want to design homes for families like mine, people who deserve beautiful spaces but can't afford them. I had to close my eyes against the tears. That was exactly what Sarah would have wanted. Not monuments to the wealthy, but homes for people who needed them most. After the ceremony, Robert Marsh found me in the hallway. "Hell of a thing you're doing, Mark. Sarah would be proud. Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." He handed me a folder. "Also wanted to show you this. The Hayes Quality Construction Division just landed the contract for the new Denver Children's Hospital expansion. $4.8 million project. Your reputation opened that door." I looked at the proposal documents. The hospital expansion would include a family housing unit, apartments for families with sick children, so parents wouldn't have to choose between being at their child's bedside and having a place to sleep. "It's perfect," I said. "You helped design the proposal. Your consulting has been invaluable." Robert smiled. "The client specifically asked for the Mark Hayes touch. Said they'd heard you were a man who understood what it meant to fight for survival." After Robert left, I walked through the architecture building, looking at student projects displayed on the walls. Designs for affordable housing, community centers, schools in underserved neighborhoods, the next generation of architects, building with purpose. My phone buzzed, an email notification from my financial advisor. Quarterly report attached. Portfolio performing well. Current net worth, $164 million. $164 million. The $1,387 million from the sale had grown modestly through careful investments. I lived simply now, a small condo in Highlands, a reliable truck, no debts. My medical bills were paid. The scholarship fund was endowed. I had consulting income from Titan. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't building an empire or proving something or taking care of anyone else. I was just living. That evening, I drove to the broker, the steakhouse where I'd ended things with David. I requested the same corner booth, ordered bourbon. I could drink again now that chemo was over, and pulled out my phone. There was a notification from Google Alerts, something I'd set up months ago out of morbid curiosity. David Hayes, plus Denver. The article was from a local business journal. Former construction executive files for bankruptcy. David Hayes, 43. Formerly of Hayes Brothers Construction, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy last week, listing debts of $340,000 against assets of $12,000. Court documents show Hayes lost substantial sums in cryptocurrency investments and online gambling over the past year. Hayes's bankruptcy filing comes less than a year after his brother, Mark Hayes, sold Hayes Brothers Construction to Titan Construction for an undisclosed sum. According to sources, David Hayes received approximately $736,000 from the sale, but quickly lost the funds through poor investments. Hayes could not be reached for comment. His attorney declined to discuss the case. I read the article twice, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction, vindication, triumph. Instead, I felt nothing, just a hollow sadness for the brother David could have been, if he'd been someone different. My phone rang. Patricia. "Did you see the article?" "Just read it. $340,000. In debt. Mark, he lost everything and then went into debt on top of it. How is that even possible? Gambling, crypto speculation, desperation." I took a sip of bourbon, the burn familiar and grounding. He was always chasing the big score. Even when we were kids, he wanted shortcuts to success. That's why the band failed. He wanted to be famous without putting in the work. "He called me last week," Patricia said quietly. "Asked if I knew of any construction companies hiring. I told him I'd retired and couldn't help." "Did he ask about me?" "Yes. I told him I hadn't spoken to you in months." She paused. "That was a lie. I hope you don't mind." "I don't mind." After we hung up, I finished my bourbon and walked out into the October evening. The air was crisp, autumn turning Denver's trees gold and red, the same colors as the sunset the day Sarah died. But I wasn't thinking about death anymore. 1 year later, I stood in front of a new building in downtown Denver. 3 stories, brick and glass with clean modern lines and a warmth that made you want to go inside. The architecture students from the Sarah Hayes Scholarship Program
had designed it as their senior project, and I'd funded its construction. $680,000 of my own money. The sign above the door read, Sarah Hayes Community Center, a place to call home. Inside was everything Sarah had dreamed about. A community kitchen where families could cook together, classrooms for adult education, a child care center for working parents, meeting spaces for support groups, and upstairs 6 small apartments for people in transition, domestic violence survivors, veterans, families escaping homelessness. Maria Rodriguez, now in her final year of architecture school, had led the design team. She stood beside me at the ribbon cutting, tears streaming down her face. We built this for her, for Mrs. Hayes, for everyone who needs a place to feel safe. The mayor gave a speech about community investment. Robert Marsh presented a check from Titan Construction for $50,000 to fund operations. Local news cameras captured it all. But the moment that mattered most came after everyone left. I stood alone in the empty community kitchen, running my hands along the countertops the architecture students had selected. Not granite this time. Warm butcher block, practical and welcoming. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album I'd created. Sarah. Her smile looked out at me from dozens of pictures. Sarah in our kitchen. Sarah at job sites. Sarah holding blueprints. Sarah reading in her bay window. Sarah, alive and vibrant and full of dreams. I did it, baby, I whispered to her image. I built something that matters. Not for profit or empire, just because it needed to exist. My phone rang. An unknown Denver number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mark Hayes. Speaking. This is Elena Martinez from Denver Social Services. I'm calling about your brother, David Hayes. You're listed as his emergency contact. My stomach clenched. What happened? Mr. Hayes was found unresponsive in his vehicle last night. He's alive, but he's being held for psychiatric evaluation. He attempted... She paused, delicately. He attempted to harm himself. We need to notify next of kin. The world tilted slightly. Is he going to be okay? Physically, yes. Mentally, that's why we're holding him for evaluation. Mr. Hayes, I know this is difficult, but he has no one else. His ex-wife moved out of state. His daughter is only 16 and living with her mother. You're the only family he has in Colorado. I closed my eyes. Saw the little brother who'd cried at our parents' funeral. The best man who'd toasted Sarah and me at our wedding. The partner who'd stolen everything while I fought for my life. What do you need from me? He's at Denver Health Medical Center, psychiatric unit. He's asking for you. I drove to Denver Health in the fading afternoon light, my hands tight on the steering wheel. 2 years ago, I'd been in this same hospital for surgery. David had been there when I woke up crying, holding my hand. The psychiatric unit was on the 4th floor, all locked doors and watchful staff. A social worker named James met me in the waiting room. Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming. I want to prepare you. Your brother is in a very fragile state. He's cooperative with treatment, but he's deeply depressed. He's lost everything and he blames himself. He should blame himself. He stole from me while I had cancer. James's expression didn't change. Professional neutrality. I've read his file. I know about the bankruptcy, the poor decisions. But right now my concern is keeping him alive. And he says the only person he wants to see is you. They led me to a small consultation room. Gray walls, plastic chairs, a box of tissues on the table. The room where you have the hardest conversations of your life. David was brought in a moment later. He looked terrible, thinner than at the cemetery, his hair unwashed, wearing hospital scrubs. But it was his eyes that shook me. Empty, hollowed out. The eyes of someone who'd lost everything, including hope. Mark. His voice cracked. You came. The hospital called, said you tried to hurt yourself. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I took a bottle of pills. Sat in my car in the King Soopers parking lot. Figured if I died, at least I wouldn't be homeless anymore. David, before you say anything, I know what you're thinking. That I deserve this. That this is karma or justice or whatever. He finally looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. And you're right. I do deserve this. I destroyed everything good in my life. I betrayed the only person who ever really loved me. I turned into the kind of person Mom and Dad would be ashamed of. I sat down heavily in the plastic chair. Why did you do it? Really, I've spent 2 years trying to understand. David was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I was jealous. My whole life you were the successful one, the responsible one, the one who had it all figured out. Perfect marriage, successful business. Everyone respected you. He wiped his eyes. And I was the fuck-up. The guy whose band failed, who couldn't keep a marriage together, who only had a job because his brother felt sorry for him. I didn't give you a job because I felt sorry for you. I gave you 40% of the company because you were my brother. I know, and that made it worse. You were generous and kind, and it just highlighted how selfish I was. He laughed bitterly. Then Sarah got sick, and I watched you take care of her with so much love, watched you be strong for her. And I thought, that's the kind of person I should be. So you stole from me. When you got sick, too, I panicked. I thought, what if he dies? What happens to the company? And then I started thinking, the company should be mine. I've worked there for 15 years. I deserve it. He shook his head. Somewhere along the way, I convinced myself I was entitled to what you'd built, that I'd earned it just by showing up. You had $736,000.
What happened? I wanted to prove I was as smart as you, that I could turn money into more money. So I made investments, crypto, stocks, online gambling. I thought if I could turn that $736,000 into millions, you'd see that I was capable.
That I deserved respect. His voice broke completely. Instead, I lost it all, every penny, and I realized I'd thrown away my last chance at redemption for nothing. We sat in silence. The psychiatric unit's white noise machine hummed in the background, meant to provide privacy, but there were no secrets left between us. What do you want from me, David? Nothing. I don't want anything except to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I lost everything, but because I hurt you when you were at your most vulnerable. You could have died, Mark. And while you were fighting for your life, I was stealing from you. That's unforgivable. He was right. It was unforgivable. But Sarah's voice echoed in my memory, from a conversation we'd had years ago when I'd fired an employee for stealing tools. Mark, there's a difference between justice and cruelty. Justice gives people what they deserve. Cruelty is kicking them when they're down. I looked at my brother. Broken, bankrupt, suicidal. He'd gotten justice. The question was whether I would add cruelty. I can't forgive you, I said finally. I don't know if I ever will. What you did was cruel and calculating and unforgivable. David nodded, accepting the verdict. But, I continued, I'm not going to let you die. The social worker says you need treatment. You need a place to live. Mark, no. I don't want your charity. This isn't charity. This is me deciding that I'm not going to have your death on my conscience. I pulled out my phone and called James, the social worker, back into the room. James, what does David need? Honestly? Intensive outpatient treatment for depression. A stable place to live, some kind of structure and purpose. I thought about the Sarah Hayes Community Center, about the 6 small apartments for people in transition. I have an apartment, temporary housing for people, rebuilding their lives. 6 months maximum, while he gets treatment and finds work. David's head snapped up. You'd let me live in Sarah's building. Not for you, for her. Because Sarah believed everyone deserved a second chance, even people who'd hurt her, even people who didn't deserve it. I looked at David hard. But understand this. You live there, you follow the rules. Counseling, group therapy, job searching. No drinking, no gambling, no excuses. You screw up once, you're out. Why are you doing this? Because Sarah would want me to. Because being angry at you forever doesn't change what happened. And because I had to stop, my throat tight. Because you're still my brother. I don't like you right now. I don't trust you. But I don't want you dead. James pulled out paperwork. I can facilitate this. We'll set up the outpatient program. Establish checkpoints. If David agrees to the terms, we can discharge him to transitional housing instead of Instead of homeless or dead, David was crying now, his whole body shaking. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But life isn't about what we deserve. It's about what we choose to do when we're given a chance. 3 months later, I sat in my condo looking at the monthly report from the Sarah Hayes Community Center. 6 families currently in residence.
3 had already moved on to permanent housing. Employment rate, 83%. Success stories mounting. Apartment 6 was occupied by David Hayes. According to the center director, he'd attended every counseling session.
Found a job, doing maintenance work, for a property management company. $18 an hour, nothing glamorous. Hadn't missed a rent payment, subsidized but still his responsibility. He'd also started volunteering, teaching basic construction skills to other residents, helping with repairs around the building. Small things, quiet things. We hadn't spoken since that day in the hospital. I'd set the rules and he'd followed them. That was enough. My phone rang.
Maria Rodriguez, the first scholarship recipient, now graduated and working for an architecture firm. Mr. Hayes, I wanted you to be the first to know I just got promoted to junior architect.
My first major project is designing affordable housing for a nonprofit in Colorado Springs. Maria, that's wonderful. Congratulations. It's because of you and Mrs. Hayes. You gave me more than money. You gave me a purpose. I want to spend my career designing homes for people who need them. After we hung up, I pulled out Sarah's photo. 2 years since her death. 2 years since I'd lost everything and then built it back different. Better. We did good, baby, I whispered. 10 students every year getting scholarships. A community center with your name. People getting second chances. Including David, though I still wasn't sure how I felt about that. My phone buzzed.
An email from David's counselor, sent to me as his emergency contact. Quarterly update. David Hayes has successfully completed intensive outpatient treatment. Recommend transitioning to monthly maintenance therapy. Employment stable, housing stable.
Prognosis. Cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic. That felt about right. 6 months after the community center opened, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the writing immediately.
Mark, I know I'm not supposed to contact you directly, but I'm moving out of the community center next week. My 6 months are up. I found a studio apartment in Aurora, and I'm keeping my job. I wanted you to know I'm making it.
I also wanted to say thank you. You could have let me die. You could have let me end up on the streets. You didn't owe me anything. I'd stolen from you, betrayed you, tried to destroy everything you built. But you gave me another chance anyway.
Not because I deserved it, but because Sarah would have wanted you to. I think about her a lot, about how she warned you about me. And she was right. I've spent the past 6 months in therapy trying to understand why I became the person I became.
Why jealousy and entitlement turned me into someone who could hurt you. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm trying to be better, to become someone Mom and Dad wouldn't be ashamed of, someone Sarah wouldn't regret knowing.
I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect us to ever be brothers again, not the way we were, but I wanted you to know that your generosity wasn't wasted. You saved my life, Mark. Literally. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy.
I hope you're in remission. And I hope someday, years from now, you can think of me without feeling angry. David P.S. I donated $500 to the Sarah Hayes Scholarship Fund. It's all I could afford, but it felt important. Every year, a small piece of what I stole will help someone achieve their dreams. It'll take me 14 years to make it right at this rate, but it's a start. I read the letter 3 times, waiting to feel rage or resentment or betrayal. Instead, I felt tired. And maybe, just maybe, the smallest hint of peace. David was right. We'd never be brothers the way we were. That relationship had died in a phone call 2 years ago, when I'd heard him laughing about putting me in a nursing home. But maybe we could be something else. 2 men who shared blood and history, who'd hurt each other and survived it, who were trying, in their own broken ways, to be better. I walked to my desk and pulled out stationery. Sarah had bought it years ago, cream paper with our initials embossed at the top. I'd never been able to throw it away. David, I received your letter. I'm glad you're doing well. You're right, I will probably never forgive you completely. What you did changed me. It taught me that even people we love can betray us. That trust, once broken, can't be fully restored. But I don't want you to die. I don't want you to fail. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life angry. So here's what I can offer. I hope you succeed. I hope you build a life you're proud of. I hope you become the man Mom and Dad raised you to be. We won't be close. We probably won't even talk. But I'll know you're out there, trying to be better. And that's enough. I'm in remission. The cancer is gone.
I'm consulting for Titan Construction, and I've started dating someone, a teacher named Rachel, who makes me laugh and doesn't know anything about construction. Life is good. Sarah would be proud of the scholarship program. Maria Rodriguez just got promoted to junior architect. 10 more students got scholarships this year. The community center is thriving. You asked if I could think of you without anger. Not yet, but maybe someday.
Mark, I mailed the letter and didn't expect a response. That wasn't the point. 2 years later, I stood at Sarah's grave on the anniversary of her death. 4 years gone now, but the pain had softened into something gentler. Memory instead of agony. I brought someone to meet you, baby. Rachel stood beside me, her hand in mine. 42, divorced, with a 10-year-old daughter who Sarah would have loved. She squeezed my hand gently. Hi, Sarah. Mark talks about you all the time. About how smart you were, how funny, how you always knew the right thing to do. Rachel's voice was steady, respectful. I know I can't replace you. I wouldn't want to, but I want you to know I'm taking care of him, and he's taking care of me. We stood there in silence for a moment, the three of us connected by love and loss and hope. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria Rodriguez. Mr. Hayes, just got amazing news. Remember that affordable housing project in Colorado Springs? We won the contract, breaking ground next month, dedicating it to Mrs. Hayes. I showed Rachel the message. She smiled. 20 families getting beautiful, affordable homes because of Sarah's legacy. That's incredible. It's what she would have wanted. Buildings that matter. As we walked back to my truck, I noticed someone standing by another grave about 100 yards away. Thin, dressed in work clothes, holding a small bouquet of flowers. David. Our eyes met across the cemetery. He nodded once. Acknowledgement, not a request for conversation. I nodded back. Then he placed his flowers on a grave and walked away. Later, I drove back to see whose grave he'd visited. Robert and Margaret Hayes. Beloved parents. 1948, 2007, 1950, 2007, our parents. David had been visiting Mom and Dad, not Sarah. I stood there looking at their headstone, thinking about the 2 boys they'd raised. One who'd built an empire and lost it. One who'd destroyed everything and tried to rebuild. Both of us doing our best to honor the people we'd loved and lost. The doctor's office was different this time. Not the sterile hospital room where I'd received my diagnosis, but a cheerful outpatient clinic with windows overlooking Denver's mountains. 5 years cancer-free, Mark. Officially in full remission. Dr. Morrison shook my hand firmly. You're one of my success stories. I drove home, not to the house David had tried to steal, but to the home Rachel and I had bought together in Cherry Hills. Modest but beautiful, with a garden Rachel had planted and a workshop where I built furniture on weekends. Rachel met me at the door, her daughter Emma right behind her. How'd it go? 5 years. I'm officially cured. Rachel pulled me into a hug while Emma cheered. We're celebrating. I already made reservations at the broker. The broker, where I'd ended things with David 7 years ago. Where Sarah and I had celebrated our first major contract. Full circle. That evening, sitting in the same corner booth, I raised a glass of bourbon. To Sarah, to second chances, to survival. Rachel raised her wine glass. To Sarah, and to you for being brave enough to rebuild. My phone buzzed. An email notification from the Sarah Hayes Community Center. Annual report attached. I opened it while Rachel chatted with Emma about school. Sarah Hayes Community Center. 7-year report, total families served. 237 successful transitions to permanent housing. 89% employment rate. 91% lives changed, immeasurable. There was a note at the bottom from the center director. Mark, you should know. One of our former residents, David Hayes, has been volunteering as a construction instructor for 3 years now. He teaches basic skills and helps residents with job training. Won't take payment, says it's the least he can do. He's made a real difference here. I stared at the note for a long time. David, teaching others the skills I'd taught him. David, giving back in the only way he knew how. I hadn't spoken to him in 7 years, hadn't forgiven him, but he was still trying, still working to become someone better. "What is it?" Rachel asked, seeing my expression. "Nothing, just closure, I think." That night, lying in bed beside Rachel, I thought about everything that had happened. The cancer, the betrayal, the destruction and rebuilding, the scholarship students and the community center and the lives changed. I thought about David, who'd tried to steal everything and ended up with nothing, then slowly, painfully, rebuilt a life worth living. I thought about Sarah, whose death had shattered me, but whose memory had given me purpose. And I thought about myself, Mark Hayes, who'd fought cancer and won, who'd lost a business and built something better, who'd been betrayed by family and learned to trust again. "Rachel," I whispered in the darkness. "I'm happy." She rolled over and kissed me softly. "Good. You deserve to be." The University of Colorado's Architecture School auditorium was packed. 200 students and faculty gathered for the dedication of the new wing, the Sarah Hayes Center for Sustainable Design. I stood at the podium, 70 years old now, cancer-free for a decade, with Rachel beside me and Emma, now 20, studying architecture, in the front row. My wife Sarah never got to be an architect. Life got in the way, her father's death, money troubles, my construction business that needed both of us working to survive. But she never stopped dreaming about it, never stopped sketching designs and imagining buildings that would make people feel at home. I looked out at the crowd. 200 future architects, including 40 students who'd received Sarah Hayes Memorial Scholarships over the past decade. When Sarah died, I thought her dreams died with her. But then I realized something. Dreams don't die unless we let them. They can transform, evolve, live on through others. I gestured to the new building behind me, all glass and light and sustainable materials. This center will teach the next generation of architects to design with purpose, not just for profit or ego, but to create spaces that matter. Affordable housing, community centers, schools, buildings that change lives. Maria Rodriguez stood up in the audience. She was 32 now, a successful architect, with her own firm specializing in affordable housing. She started clapping, and the entire auditorium joined her. After the ceremony, I found a quiet corner of the new building and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through photos. Sarah young and vibrant, Sarah sick but smiling, Sarah gone but never forgotten. And then, against my better judgment, I searched for David Hayes Denver. The results showed a LinkedIn profile. David Hayes, Construction Training Coordinator at HopeWorks, Colorado, a nonprofit teaching job skills to at-risk youth. His profile photo showed him older, gray-haired, but with eyes that looked peaceful. His bio read, 15 years teaching construction skills to young people who need a second chance. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it. I stared at those words for a long time. Then, I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I sent a message. "David, I saw your LinkedIn profile. Congratulations on the work you're doing. It matters. Mark." 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Mark, thank you for those words. They mean more than you know. I heard about the new building dedication. Sarah would be so proud. I'm proud of you too, big brother." David. I read that last line 5 times. Big brother. He hadn't called me that in 12 years. I didn't respond. But I didn't delete the message either. Because maybe, just maybe, after 10 years of distance and healing and rebuilding, we'd both become people who deserved a second chance at brotherhood, not the relationship we'd had. That was gone forever, broken beyond repair. But something new, something built on hard-won wisdom and genuine change, something Sarah would approve of. I walked out of the Sarah Hayes Center for Sustainable Design into the Colorado sunshine, Rachel waiting for me by the car, Emma chattering excitedly about her architecture classes. My phone buzzed one more time. A notification from the scholarship fund. This year's donations, $47,000. New donors include David Hayes, $5,000 annual commitment, $5,000 for someone living on a nonprofit salary, That was significant. That was sacrifice. That was trying to repay the unpayable. I looked up at the building that bore Sarah's name, at the students streaming out, carrying her dreams forward, at the life I'd rebuilt from ashes. "Ready to go home?" Rachel asked. "Yeah," I said, taking her hand. "I'm ready, because I was home, not in a building or a city or a business. Home was the life I'd built, the love I'd found, the legacy I'd created, the peace I'd finally achieved. David had tried to steal my house and ended up homeless, but I'd built something he could never take. I'd built a life worth living, and that was the sweetest revenge of all."
If you enjoyed this story,